Welcome to Primal Wild Stories. Two giraffe calves standing in a field of ash do something that breaks every rule of the wild. They lower their impossibly long necks until their foreheads touch the ground. They're not bowing to a king. They're begging a rhino, a creature built for war, not mercy, to save their dying mother. And here's the part that'll wreck you. The rhino stops. Battle-scarred and weary, he looks down at these trembling bobbies and has to choose between survival and something far more dangerous: compassion. The Mas Aymara had become an apocalypse. 3 days after the wildfire, ash fell like cursed snow, coating everything in death. The sky was sickly gray, choked with smoke. The rhino moved through it like a tank through fog. Each deliberate step cracked through charred earth. His horn, chipped and scarred from a lifetime of battles, cut through the haze. He had one goal: the mudflats, 15 miles northeast, water, survival. He didn't think about the herds that used to graze here, all gone now, burned or fled. Survival wasn't sentimental. You didn't survive 32 years in the wild by stopping for every tragedy. But then the rhythm broke. Two shapes emerged through the smoke. Tall, too tall to be anything but giraffes, but far too small to be adults. Their spotted coats were gray with ash. One of them moved toward him. There's an unwritten rule in the wild: predators and prey don't negotiate. But when the first calf took another step forward, the rhino's instincts screamed. His horn lowered, preparation. One charge and this would be over. But the calf didn't run. He lowered his neck in something that looked disturbingly like prayer. His knees bent, his impossibly long neck curved downward until his muzzle touched the ash. The second calf mirrored him. The rhino could have walked away. The mudflats were waiting. But here's the thing about surviving alone for 32 years. Somewhere deep in the loneliness, you start wondering if survival is actually the same thing as living. The first calf lifted his head and met the rhino's eyes. Something in that gaze, raw, pleading, utterly defenseless, cracked something in the rhino's chest. The calf turned slowly, looking back toward the blackened grove. Then he waited. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to share a moment with you. By subscribing to Primal Wild Stories, you join a community that believes compassion still lives on, even in the most unlikely places. Every new subscriber helps these stories reach further. The rhino followed them, hatting himself for it. The two calves moved through the burned grove with quiet urgency, glancing back to make sure he followed. The trees here were grotesque, blackened trunks twisted at unnatural angles, branches hanging like broken bones. Then the air changed. Blood, the rhino's nostrils flared. The copper tang of fresh injury mixed with infection. But there was something else. Metal, man-made. The first calf stopped at a collapsed acacia. Beyond them, partially hidden by thornbush and ash, the rhino saw her. The mother giraffe. She was magnificent even in ruin. She lay on her side, breathing in shallow, ragged bursts, but it was her leg that made the rhino's breath stop. Poacher's wire had bitten deep, carving through hide into muscle. The flesh had swollen into angry purple ridges. The wire was anchored to tons of fire-hardened wood. The mother's eyes found the rhino. In them he saw resignation. She'd already started saying goodbye to the world. The first calf made a soft, broken bleat. The second pressed her muzzle against her mother's neck. For a long moment, the world contained only two pairs of eyes. The mother giraffe looked at the rhino, and something ancient and wordless passed between them: understanding. Her children would die without her, too young to survive alone. The rhino knew that look because he'd worn it himself once. Years ago, his own calf had gotten trapped in a mud hole. The rhino had pushed and heaved until his throat bled. He'd failed. The mud had won. He'd never risked that kind of devastation again. But the mother was looking at him now with desperate mathematics: my pain versus their future. She wasn't asking the rhino to save her. She was asking him to make sure her sacrifice wasn't for nothing. The first calf nuzzled his mother's cheek, and she pressed back, a gesture so tender it felt obscene to witness. The rhino stepped forward. The physics were brutal. The wire looped around the giraffe's leg, anchored to the massive trunk. Every attempt she'd made to escape had only tightened the noose. The rhino wasn't at full strength. 3 days without water had left him running on fumes. But the real problem was the wire itself. If he used brute force, it would either snap and sever the giraffe's leg completely, or cinch tighter and finish her. His horn was a weapon. 32 years of battles had sharpened it into a spear, but this required something he'd never needed before. Precision. The wire threaded through a 3-inch gap between trunk and branch. Just enough room for a horn, if the angle was right. If a 2-ton animal could somehow thread a needle made of wood and wire in desperation. The two calves watched with eyes that held more faith than the rhino had felt in decades. He positioned himself, his horn hovering near the gap. One wrong move and he'd make this worse. The first attempt failed. The wire vibrated and the mother flinched. The rhino repositioned. This time his horn tip found the gap, sliding in with agonizing slowness. His entire world narrowed to that single point of contact. Every muscle screamed to push, but strength wasn't the answer, control was. He angled his horn upward, the wire caught, he lifted steady, gentle. The wire resisted, then. Ping! The wire slipped free. The rhino kept lifting, threading the metal along his horn like a deadly ribbon. The loop around the giraffe's leg loosened. It fell, dropped into the ash like a dead snake. The mother gasped, raw, relieved. Nobody moved. Then the first calf nudged his mother's shoulder. She tried to stand. The first attempt was catastrophic. Her injured leg buckled and she crashed down, ash exploding into the air. But she tried again. This time she compensated, using 3 good legs. Her neck swayed as she rose, finally standing at her full height. 16 feet of battered grace. She took one careful step toward the rhino, then another. When she reached him, the mother giraffe did something that broke every rule. She lowered her elegant head and gently pressed her forehead against his scarred flank. It was recognition, one parent to another, one survivor to another. The rhino stood perfectly still, feeling the warmth of her touch. For the first time in 32 years, he didn't feel alone. The rhino reached the mudflats after sunset. He'd stayed with the giraffe family until the mother could walk, until the calves stopped trembling. Now he stood at the water's edge under stars. He waded in slowly, feeling the mud embrace him. As he lowered himself deeper, he realized something had shifted inside him. That calcified thing in his chest had cracked open, and what poured out wasn't weakness. It was memory of his son chasing birds, of trust during thunderstorms. He'd spent 32 years believing that closing his heart protected it. But watching the mother fight, not for herself, but for her children, reminded him of something he'd forgotten. Love isn't the weakness, isolation is. Maybe that's how broken worlds heal, one impossible choice at a time, one act of gentleness in a landscape of ash. The horn that had fought 100 battles had finally won the one that mattered, not by destroying, by being gentle enough to free a mother so her children could see tomorrow. Surviving alone isn't living, but choosing compassion when the world expects cruelty. That's how you become immortal. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to Primal Wild Stories.